arrived here in Arizona, and I want to show you guys how to make the most delicious homemade strawberry jelly. This recipe is so simple and it only calls for 3 ingredients: fresh strawberries, fresh lemon juice, and granulated sugar. You will also need a jar for storing your jelly. Now, you can use a mason jar and you can sterilize, which is what I did with the one that we're gonna be using today. But I had already made a batch of this and I just used a regular jar because this jelly is gonna be used up very quickly. So I'm storing it in the refrigerator and just using a regular jar. But if you want it to last longer, you can definitely use a mason jar and sterilize the jar. And I'll show you in this video how to sterilize the jar. There are a few other utensils that you will need, so I'll show you what those are in the next clip. Okay, let's make some jelly. For this recipe, you will need 1 1/4 cup or 250 grams of granulated sugar, 2 tablespoons or 30 grams of freshly squeezed lemon juice, and 1 pound of fresh strawberries. Now you want to make sure that the strawberries that you use are fully ripened, but that they don't have any bruises on them. You will also want a saucepan for boiling the strawberries on the stovetop, a cutting board and a knife for dicing the strawberries, a masher and a rubber spatula, measuring cups or a digital scale depending on what you want to use to measure, a jar like mentioned earlier for storing the jelly, and a ceramic plate and a spoon, which you're going to use later to do what's called the plate test, and that's how you're going to test to see if the jelly is ready. Okay, to prepare for this recipe, we'll start by putting this plate in the freezer so that it's nice and cold by the time we need to use it. Then we're going to boil some water on the stovetop to sterilize our mason jar. Then you're going to take a bowl filled with baking soda and water so you can use that to wash your strawberries. We'll begin by cutting off the green part of the strawberry and then just place that entire strawberry in the baking soda and water mixture so that it can be soaking and be getting cleaned. Strawberries are notoriously dirty berries, so make sure you wash them really well before you use them for this jelly recipe. Let the strawberries soak in that water for about 10 minutes. Meanwhile, your water should be boiling on the stovetop and you can stick your mason jar and the lid in there. Boil it for 10 to 15 minutes to sterilize it. After 10 minutes, rinse your strawberries in some fresh water and then they are ready to begin dicing. Now, it doesn't really matter how you dice these. You don't have to be super accurate. You just want to get them a little bit smaller so that they're easier to mash when you begin boiling the strawberries on the stovetop. But like I said, you don't have to be super accurate with how you dice them. So I preferred to do this size, but if you want to do smaller or larger pieces, feel free to do what you're comfortable with. When your mason jar is done being sterilized, you can take it out, place it upside down on a towel, and let it dry along with the lid. Next, you're going to take those diced strawberries and pour them into your saucepan. Cover it with the lemon juice, give that a nice stir, and then add in the sugar on top of that. And then you want to just stir it so that the sugar evenly coats the pieces of strawberry. And then you're going to let this sit for about 15 minutes so that the sugar can start working to break down the strawberries. After about 15 minutes, this is what it should look like. You can see that the strawberries are starting to break down. You can see the juice that's beginning to form. So now we're going to turn our stovetop on to medium heat, and we're going to begin warming those strawberries up, giving it a nice stir every so often so that the strawberries begin to soften and so that the sugar begins to dissolve better. Occasionally, you'll want to go in with a masher and begin to mash those strawberries. Now, at first, you're not going to be able to mash them super well because they're still going to be harder, but as it begins to heat up and as the strawberries begin to get softer, you'll be able to mash it better.
So during this time, you're basically going to be going back and forth between giving it an occasional stir and then mashing it. And this is going to take about 10 minutes of you doing this for it to heat up and begin to form a rolling boil. Now, you will notice here, this is about 5 minutes in, you'll see that it starts becoming frothy, steam starts coming out. This is totally normal. This is what it should look like, and that means that it is working. So don't worry if this is what it looks like. Continue to heat it up, continue to stir, continue to mash until it comes to a rolling boil. Okay, once it begins to boil, you need to be stirring it constantly so that it won't burn. Now, I don't use a thermometer for this recipe because it's so easy to just use the plate method. So that means that you'll want to time how long this part takes, and it'll take you about 10 to 15 minutes of constant stirring for it to be done. I know it's a long time to be standing there stirring, but be patient. I promise it'll pay off. During this time, you can go back in with your masher and mash the strawberries even more. Just make sure that when you're doing it, you're also stirring just to prevent burning. Your strawberries will probably get stuck in the masher like this, so just use your rubber spatula to get them out. Okay, so this is about halfway in, and you'll notice here, see how it's beginning to have more of a jelly-like consistency? So that's a good sign. That means we're on the right track, but it still needs longer to go. So if yours looks like this, keep on stirring. Make yourself comfortable while you're there stirring. Maybe put on some good music, a good podcast to listen to. This part does take a little while. At this point, I'm going to take my hot plate down and get it ready because I'm going to use that to put my saucepan on while I'm going and getting my plate out of the freezer to do the plate test. Okay, this is near the end of the 15 minutes and my jam is looking like it's ready. So I want to go get my plate out of the freezer to do a final plate test. And so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to move my saucepan over to the hot plate. And then I'm going to go to the freezer and grab my plate out of the freezer. I'm going to put a little bit of jelly onto the plate. You'll see that there's already some on there because I did do a test a little bit earlier and the jelly wasn't quite ready. I'm going to go put that plate back in the freezer for 1 to 2 minutes, and during that time I'm going to keep stirring the jam on the stovetop so that it doesn't burn. After the 1 to 2 minutes is done, I put it back on the hot plate and I go get my plate out. Run a spoon through the jam. If the jam stays in place and doesn't fill that line back in, that means that it is ready. Here you can see what the consistency of the jam looks like up close. Remove it from the heat, turn the stove top off, and fill your jar as best as you can. If you're a little messy like I was here and spill it on the sides, don't worry too much. You can just get a towel later and wipe it up. Place the jar in the freezer for a few minutes, give it a stir with a knife just to make sure that it cools evenly, and then after about 5 minutes, take it out, put the lid of the jar on, and then you can place it back in the fridge or the freezer depending on when you're going to use it. And that's it. There is your homemade strawberry jam. Guys, this jam is so delicious. I promise you're going to love it.
There you have it, guys, homemade strawberry jelly with only 3 ingredients. Now, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. This is only my second time making this jelly from scratch. In the past, I had wanted to make jelly, and honestly, it scared me. I thought that the process would be really difficult, really laborious, and I just never got the courage to try it. But now that I know how easy it is, I never want to go back to paying for store-bought jelly again. Even though you can find some really good brands out there, they're so expensive, and this is so much less expensive to make and just as delicious. Now, if I can do that whole process, and this is only my second time doing it, then you can do it as well. I promise you, it's not that difficult. Go get yourself some fresh strawberries, some lemons, some sugar, and make this jelly. You can use it on so many things. You can put it on ice cream, you can put it in your oatmeal, you can make the infamous wonderful peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There's so many different ways that you can use jelly. My favorite way is to put it on homemade sourdough bread with butter and eat it that way. That is one of my favorite desserts or snacks to eat. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you'll give it a shot, and if you do, please tell me how it worked out for you, or if you made any changes to it, let me know. And thank you for watching. Stick around for the next video.